Hi everyone, and I hope you're all well. I'm here today to talk about my trip to Santorini back in 2016, my personal experience of visiting the island, the backstory, and also recommendations and hints and tips. So most people who know me will know that I've only been into travelling since I got into my 30s, and Santorini was the trip, if you like, which was the first in my 30s, and I travelled out there the day after my 31st birthday. So a couple of years prior, my friend Matt and I had gone on a comparatively unremarkable trip to Albufeira in Portugal, and we'd done this trip as more or less an impulse trip for a few days break. So a while afterwards, our friend Richard said to let us know if we do another similar trip, as he'd like to come on it, which we said we would. And again, most people who know me will know that my late 20s was quite a fraught time for me personally, and having relocated and having had a new lease of life a few months after turning 30 and feeling much more settled, the talk of doing another holiday surfaced. So I'd like to think that my geography is pretty good, but admittedly I'd never heard of Santorini before Matt suggested the idea. Having looked up Santorini, I thought this looks like a great place and I was intrigued. So we were both in, and having contacted Rich, he said he was up for it too, but we could have done with a fourth person. So I thought of contacting our old friend John. So I dropped him a message, and usually from experience when people organise such things, it's sometimes not a quick and decisive answer. So within a few minutes he said he'd be up for it, and then I realised we were onto a winner. So subsequently I set up a Facebook mailer, and a month or so later we booked the trip and we were off towards the end of May. So in terms of getting there, we flew out from Gatwick, and the flight out took just under 4 hours. So logistically, my nearest airport is Birmingham, and I don't believe that there are any direct flights from there. Anyone does want to fill me in if I'm wrong, but from what I've seen and heard, I believe it's only Gatwick and Manchester that seem to be the predominant flyers that go there. And we flew with EasyJet. So in terms of where we stayed in the Fira district of Santorini, which was perfect for us, as we were first timers in a central location. So we were only a few minutes walk from the centre of town, and we were close to a tourist information centre, bars and restaurants. And despite the closeness, where we stayed wasn't in your face, and the hotel felt peaceful, and for what we'd paid for it, we were perfectly satisfied with it. So the hotel we stayed at was called the Sunrise Hotel, which was a basic hotel with decent facilities and a swimming pool. None of us had any complaints, and logistically it was perfect. And for anyone wanting a good location whilst doing a trip there, whilst being conservative, you could do a lot worse. So in terms of the island itself, out of the many Greek islands there are to visit, people seem to view Santorini and the neighbouring Mykonos as the premium islands. Personally, I haven't visited Mykonos, but it is evident that Santorini has a lot of money floating around in parts, and is demonstrated, for example, by the yachts and expensive foodie places around parts of the island. Despite this, it isn't in your face in comparison to other places I've been to in the past, like Vegas and Monaco. So if visiting, I would certainly recommend visiting a part of the island called Ia, which is spelled OIA, as the sunset and views over the Aegean Sea are just amazing. But I would advise to get there early, as there can be a lot of tourists there with their selfie sticks who can have a tendency to just barge you out the way. So just moving on to excursions. So having organised the holiday myself, I thought it would be best to organise a couple of excursions. So I think I got it right in organising two in total, which for a week was, I think, was ample. So organised a wine excursion and a catamaran excursion as well. So firstly, with the wine excursion, I'm personally not much of a wine drinker and much more of an ale person, but this excursion was a brilliant cultural trip, sort of learning about things like how they make the wine, visiting the cellars, learning about the different wines, and we even got a meal at the end of it. This excursion I would recommend to anyone who's into wine or just wants to appreciate something different culturally. So I'll move on to the alcohol side of things in more detail in a bit, but on the wine firstly, due to the weather, I would assume in Santorini, white wine seems to be more prevalent than red, though naturally you can get a lot of red if that's your preference. So one of the reasons being is, as I say, the weather, and a lot of the food on the islands is typically centred around white fish, so naturally white wine is complementary to fish or white fish. And the second excursion we did was a cruise on a catamaran. So this was a great excursion where, again, we got a meal and drinks included, and we got to swim in the sea. So I found the cruise certainly makes you appreciate the natural beauty of the island and its surroundings. So just moving on to the nightlife and the alcohol. So I found the nightlife in Santorini was really good, and sort of Fira, people say, is where most of it's at. But it's certainly the polar opposite to the British tourist places abroad, like Tenerife and Benidorm, for example. So where we stayed in Fira had a decent nightlife. Everything seemed in good spirits. It was all chilled out and everyone seemed to be up for a good time. So like Santorini in general, booze doesn't come cheap, and from memory I was spending around €5 to €6 a pint. For an ale drinker like me, Santorini does have local ales called Red Donkey, Yellow Donkey and Crazy Donkey, from which what I remember were really pleasant, and admittedly my face would have lit up at the time when I found they had ales, as I've always viewed ale as a very British and Irish thing. So lager wise as well, I remember they had the two lagers called Mythos and Alpha Beer, which are Greek lagers. And again, as far as lagers go, these were pleasant. And due to the general price of things, one of the bars was doing either a bog off or buy one get one half price on cocktails, which was pretty good. Personally, I'm not much of a cocktail drinker myself or know much about them, but suddenly I knew more than I did in a short space of time. So in terms of bars, excuse me, my favourite bar/club was one called the Two Brothers Bar. So it was a late bar/club which had great music, good drinks, and a real mix of people and nationalities in there, and everyone was up for a good time. So we got talking to people of all walks there and just had a brilliant night. So certainly one of the best I've had, and certainly if I go back there in over time, I'd love to revisit that. So other bars in Fira I can remember worth being a visit were the Highlander Bar, the Irish Bar Murphy's, and the Enigma Bar. So all seem to be chilled out and have a laid back vibe. So in terms of recommendations, when I looked at the website CN Traveller, they were reviewing most visited Greek islands. The most visited Greek islands, and recommended Santorini as a place for first timers and honeymooners, which I think is pretty close to the mark. I found the trip simple, easy to navigate, and it didn't push me out my comfort zone too much. And again with CN Traveller, there did seem to be a lot of people who were on their honeymoons, and a lot of couples there too. And on a personal level, I'm one of these Brits who doesn't really like bumping into or ending up meeting a lot of other Brits abroad, or going to places where there are Brits getting drunk and tearing up the place. Usually from personal experience, you'll invariably meet someone who comes from your hometown, or you'll both know someone mutually, and I just want to get away without being reminded of home. And such places, I think, like the ones just mentioned, can have the tendency to feel like Britain with a lot more sun than we normally get. So I found there were lots of different nationalities there, but it was chiefly North, South Americans and Chinese who visited, and they all seemed like a really good bunch of people on the whole. And just going into things like cost and spending money, I would say spending money is all relative. It depends on what your spending habits are and how expensive your tastes are as well. If you want to do the whole thing with spending money included for £3 or £5, I'm sure you'll be able to do that without breaking sweat. So I'm personally not a massive earner, and typically I do holidays not on a shoestring but conservatively, and the majority of any disposable income I get will go on holidays. So I always joke that if I'm flying out on a carrier which isn't EasyJet or Ryanair, then I'm either going out of Europe or going somewhere really exotic. So from memory, we did our flights and accommodation for just over £450, and with that, as mentioned earlier, our accommodation did the job. So I would say if you're looking to go in future, once this whole coronavirus ends, and you're looking at going for a week, for example, and going conservatively, then I would say probably 1,500 all in, including your flights, accommodation and spending money, including for allowing for €100 a day. You should be able to have a comfortable time. And I can't remember the overall amount I spent there, but for absolutely everything, I did it for just over €1,000, I believe. So I recommend not to do things on a shoestring, as you'll become unstuck quickly, and be prepared to spend more than you originally planned to. Santorini is really a luxury island, so you should really try to make the most of it. So finally, in total at the time of doing this video, I've now been to 25 countries outside the UK, and I'm now aged 35. So by the time I'd turned 30, I'd been to 14. So as you can imagine, the last 4 years of 4 years or so, having gone just after my 31st birthday, have been spent travelling to many places, and the large majority, as I said, of any income I've had has been spent on travel. So, I mean, out of everywhere I've been to, I would say in terms of countries, Italy is probably my favourite country, but I think head and shoulders, and I think I'd like to think I've been to some good places. I would say that Santorini is without a doubt my favourite place I've been to, and I'd love to go back sometime. So no matter if you're married, coupled, single, or wherever you're from, I'd recommend to give it a go, and I'm sure you wouldn't be disappointed. So thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed this. I'll happily take any questions, and I hope you've enjoyed watching. Thanks a lot. Over and out.